Good morning, everybody. Sorry I started up a little late today. But we got some trades to go over, so give me just a second and I will get that list shared out. Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to post this in the Discord really quick. Hold on one second, I'm just trying to find the watch list that I'm looking for from last night. Okay, and the symbols we're going to be going over, which I'll type them out because I know not everybody is in the Discord. We're going to go over SMCI, Starbucks, okay, now for this watch list, I'm going to type some of these options out really quick because I know not everybody has the Discord chat. Okay, so these are all for June 18th. Let me just type these all out really quick. It's just going to be 1 second. So I want you to watch list these options that I'm typing out. Good morning, everybody. Sorry we did start up a little late today, but we will get to everything. Let me check the SPY in just 1 second, Silver. So we have about 5 minutes until the market starts, but we will properly cover everything. 124 call. Okay, so those are the options that we're watching today. Also wanted to add SoFi on there, but did not get a chance yet. Let's check SPY really quick. SPY, SPY, SPY. Sorry, I'm blind. Yeah, it's not the prettiest, but it can absolutely be head and shoulder liquidity. We were counting that yesterday as part of that, and potentially we would see this right shoulder, but now this right shoulder is kind of forming the head. Well, we now have something like this. However, this can be very, very deceptive. Okay. Reason why is because yesterday we pulled down all the way to that 754.59. Okay. As of the pre-market and overnight and everything, technically we did not invalidate this giant cup right here. Now, this doesn't look like a very pretty cup at all. However, this has a lot of ability to pull upward in the day still, even though we're seeing a little bit of selling in the pre-market and everything. So we'll check the VVIX that open, we'll check the HIG, we'll make sure kind of where the direction of the day is going. Okay, so 3 minutes until market open, but we're going to go over kind of all the different symbols that we talked about. And we'll just do it one symbol at a time. I don't want anybody really entering these trades until we go over the symbol and really discuss why I'm deciding to take that trade or not. Okay. Again, these are all very dated contracts. Uh, they're out until I believe the 18th of June. So you have at least, close to 3 weeks on those contracts. Um, no reason to rush into them or anything else. So we'll go over why I'm looking at those specific contracts and, kind of what I'm looking for them to do. So we're not going to go over these in order. Um, I have my order written down on my paper, so we'll be going over it that way. So the first one we're going to go over is HPQ. Okay, now HPQ, hold on, let me get to this symbol, is doing very, very well right now. Okay, as you can see, it's pushing, up very, very hard. And it's gaining a lot of weight from Dell currently, and Dell has this exact same pattern. And we were actually talking about shorting Dell because of this. Okay, but we're not going to focus on that with the stream because that is a little more expensive compared to what most people are willing to spend. So we're doing HPQ instead. We have a completed cup here. With this completed cup, we are at the Upper Bollinger day 2. Well, that was yesterday. Today would be day 3. Which means that usually day 2 we expect a higher high over day 1. And from day 2 we start to anticipate downward consolidation. Now, that downward consolidation usually is towards the 5 MA. And within this pattern here, we see Upper Bollinger day 1, day 2, market just opened. I'll check the VVIX and everything. Just give me 1 second to kind of finish this demonstration. There's the 5 MA test in there. Upper Bollinger day 1, day 2. So while we are extended currently, I really do like these short positions because what we're trying to do here is simply just short down to support. Whether that support is only pulling down to the 5 MA or going down to the 20 MA, all we're trying to do is do a short towards the support. Okay. Those contracts, which I'm gonna pull it up really quick, should be super, super cheap still. And let's see what we got on the watch list. So those contracts are roughly about 25 per. Okay, and gives you 2 weeks. But what we're trying to do here is simply just short for the handle. We're not trying to short the symbol to oblivion or anything else. We're just simply just trying to short towards support. Just 1 second. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of these options really quick. And this is the HPQ 25 put. Okay. Now the 25 is above the 20 MA, below the 5 MA, so I figure either we're going to get to the 5 MA, which will take us down roughly that $2, or we're going to get all the way to 20 MA, which will pull us basically in the money. So let's put a bid in for 26. Okay, and I went ahead and entered a couple of those. We're in at 26, so I'm going to type those out again. June 18th. Okay, so we're in those, but let's go ahead and... Okay, so people don't have access to that channel, so I need to link the stream. Hold on, everybody. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in that. Okay. Now, I do want to kind of go over Uber and Starbucks as well because I know that we have positions going in that. But I want to check the VVIX. I want to check the SPY, everything else really quick. So SPY starting to push up here a little bit, which will be bullish if we can get all the way back up to this 758.19. That'll close this cup. We're in the lower Bollinger in the pre-market. Pushed out of the lower Bollinger. Now currently, well, we were currently slightly above that upper Bollinger, which creates the ability to short downward. Now again, even though there's that downward short potential right now, I do think the market's going to try to close that cup prior, before the short, and from there, that would create a really solid opportunity to the downside before fully pulling back up. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for on the SPY. I'm not taking a short position or anything yet. Simply just looking for primarily the upside today. But there's the potential on that. Okay. VVIX here is at the 90, so we're starting to cross into kind of like this dangerous territory again, or at least the cautionary territory. Currently it's below that range. It's at the 90.18, but technically it looked like it was pulled all the way up to the 91.63 at one point. Whether it was in the pre-market, after hours, whatever. But it did pull up towards that range. So that is concerning. We do see that there is kind of this cup built here, handle formed. From this handle forming, if we see volatility continue pulling upward, it's definitely going to pull us up into this cautionary range, which for the market, that can mean that selling is going to start picking up. With that said though, the HIG is starting to buy up quite a bit. Yesterday it was selling a little bit in the morning, but it did start picking up and buying towards the middle of the day, then started kind of selling off again. Currently today it's buying upward, but it's still below that $80 range, which is something that I don't really consider bullish right now, especially with how high up the market is compared. You know, markets pushing all-time highs, we should be seeing the HIG basically pushing all-time highs as well. Same with liquid, and currently we're not seeing that. So it is a little bit of a divergence to see liquid and HIG not being at those highs. But that can catch up quite easily, especially when we're seeing semiconductors push very, very, very hard. That definitely has the weight to carry the SPY and everything. Now, we have not fully closed this cup yet. Okay. We have closed a smaller cup here, which means that we should expect a small handle downward before fully closing this cup that I talked about at the 758.19. So I would be looking for that. calls from that cup should be, or from the bottom of this handle should be very good. Um, if you can get that lower Bollinger again, that could probably be a really nice call position to the upside today, assuming we see the follow through with semiconductors and tech that I'm anticipating. Now let's check QQQ. So QQQ starting to sell pretty heavily in here. However, again, kind of same with SPY. If we can get some of this upside, close some of this downside, which within QQQ it's telling you that basically there's that call position. No, I'm not taking that call position yet because I want to see that kind of echoed within SPY as well. And I want to see that echoed within semiconductors as well. Now, with semiconductors, we see that we have closed this cup. From that cup closing, we do anticipate bearish structure at the top to pull down, form a handle before continuation to the upside. Okay, so there is a lot of different signals that are telling us that we can be heading up today. We just need to be very cautious of the VVIX because even though it's still below that 91 range, it's starting to get very close to that range. If we see the VVIX really starting to tick upward, that can definitely, do some damage to the overall market. So that's something to be concerned of, and the fact that the HIG and liquid aren't basically at all-time highs right now, a little bit concerning as well. Okay. So let me just go ahead and check chat. All right, nothing new. Okay, cool. Let's go over what we're looking for our next position, which this is going to be mark. So MRK. Let me go ahead and pull this symbol up. Now, what I'm looking for on mark is that we do have this very bullish cup formed here. From that cup, it's looking very likely that we're forming a handle. Now, if we're forming a handle, then that means that we should be looking upward towards that 124 range again. So for mark, I really like these options at the 124 calls. I typed those out in chat earlier, but I really like those 124 calls. So we are going to try to get a bit on those. And the upside within these positions are, very, very heavy. I mean, we have a full roughly $8 to the upside, assuming we're going to be getting the structure that we're looking for and not continue breaking down. I don't think we'll continue breaking down because we do have a very well-formed cup top here. So it's looking very good to the upside. Okay. Now, I want to go over Uber really quick. Now, yesterday on Uber, we saw the price pull up all the way to this 74.56. Okay. But we do have a very well-formed cup here. Okay. From this cup, we do have a little bit of a handle forming, which I am expecting to pull us to the upside. On multiple time frames, we see how we pulled quite low, even within the 5-minute time frame, which is telling me that very likely we're going to see a reversal today and see a continuation with that within that buying. And we've been seeing this within Uber over the last few sessions where we have these pull down very, very hard and then buys up for the rest of the session. Pulls down very hard, buys up for the session. Pulls down hard, buys up for the session, pulls down hard, buys up for the session. So we are looking for kind of a continuation within that pattern. Pull down very hard, buy up very hard for the rest of the session. So we will see if that continues. But we are looking for, again, that upside. We do have the 80 calls here. What we're simply looking for is for this cup right here to close. Now, this doesn't counter any other cups or anything. I mean, technically we could close this massive cup all the way to the 102, but all we're looking for is for that close to the 80. Okay, so we will be watching that. Now on Starbucks, and I'll check the SPY and everything in just a couple minutes. But on Starbucks, we're kind of looking for the same thing here. Within the lower Bollinger, those are usually when we take entries within our symbols. And I showed this yesterday how, you know, when Starbucks usually gets to the lower Bollinger, this was kind of the outlier here. But when it gets to the lower Bollinger, usually we see a pretty large buy to the upside. So we are looking for that. Even though this move hasn't really started yet, we are looking for that upside move. And from that upside, the first target is that 108. Now, I do have the calls for 115, and these are for July 17th. I believe the date is, yeah, July 17th. And the reason why we're taking the July 17th is because we need this cup to close. From that cup to close, we need the handle towards the upside. Okay, so we have a lot of movement to still go through with Starbucks, but we should be seeing a bounce very likely today or tomorrow just based off of the lower Bollinger mechanics. Yesterday was the lower Bollinger day 2. We could see an extension of that into day 3, but that's really not what I'm looking for. Usually the day 2 is the lower low into the upward consolidation. So we are expecting that upward consolidation. However, we can still have that extend into the day 3 lower Bollinger. Now, looking at the SPY, see a little bit of a cup closing there, which this could be the handle forming for this cup towards the 758.19. Now, at the top of this 758.19, that could be a really quality short position, because if we do hit the top of that cup, that creates the conditions to pull down, form a handle, head to the upside. So we would be anticipating some bearish structure there. So if we can get that 758.19, that's kind of a very, very quality put range that I'm looking for. Semiconductors starting to form the top of that cup. QQQ starting to pull up a little bit from that major pull down. Kind of like the SPY here, we are looking for some of this upside. Apple options, we could take a look at Apple. But I am looking at some of these options to start running within the list that I shared. Sorry, I'm just looking at something in my portfolio really quick. Okay, so far we went over HPQ, and we went over Mark, we went over Starbucks. Okay, so let's go over SMCI. Now, SMCI here, we see that there's this very large cup forming. Now, can this pull all the way up towards that 58 range? Absolutely. I am looking for a brief reprieve in here though to take that call towards the upside. Um, because currently I'm looking for those 38 puts. Okay. And the reason why I'm looking for the 38 puts is one, on the daily time frame, we are very, very extended above this upper Bollinger. Okay. We had the upper Bollinger day 1, day 2 did not give the higher high. Day 3 is giving us the higher high. So we're kind of counting this as day 2 even though it's technically day 3 of the upper Bollinger. But we're seeing an overextension in here. And because we're seeing that overextension, we are looking at the 20 MA, saying, okay, 20 MA is at the 35.82, our 5 MA is at the 44.25. Either we're going to pull down, test the 5 MA, or we're going to head down to test that 20 MA. Okay. Now, the puts that I'm targeting are the 38 puts. So if we only go to the 5 MA and continue bouncing basically to the top of this cup, which would be at the 59.60, then those 38 puts would be no good. Those 38 puts would not run very well. But if we do pull down a little further, if we pull down towards that 20 MA range, then those puts are going to run in the money by a few dollars and be extremely, extremely profitable. Now, they are very cheap, last I checked. Yeah, currently they're only about... Make sure you don't put a market buy because the spread's a little large, but they're going to be about $55 to $57 per. So I'm not entering these just yet, but I am looking to get into these positions very soon here. And this trade kind of follows the HPQ/Dell trade that we're looking at. A lot of that same structure is currently going into all these symbols. Now, the upside is bullish, and this short position is not being taken to really short this in a bearish way. It's primarily to short this for bullish liquidity to continue pushing to the upside. So I am looking at that, and that is the 38 put for June 18th. Now I want to go back to volatility really quick because I want to see what's going on with that. So that is continuing to pull downward a little bit today. That's good. It's really, really good for the market. 1 minute time frame, we see there's a little bit of a cup forming here. That's bullish. That should take us to that 758.19 before we really have, some of that major bearish structure form at the top of this cup and pulling us down even further. Semiconductors still pushing very hard today. I want to look at the 1 minute time frame. Now, basically, since we have hit the top of this cup, what I'm trying to identify is some form of bearish structure building within semis. Now again, this bearish structure would not be very large, and it's purely to form a handle on this cup to continue heading to the upside. Okay, so that makes, technically a semiconductor short, very reasonable, but not something I'm going to be taking currently. Yep, you can go ahead and average down to those USO puts. Again, we have plenty of time, and we're simply just looking for kind of the war to end and for us to have our oil prices pull down, above the standard range. Okay, so the 90 puts would target that very well because pulling back down towards this 90 range or towards this normal range would be between these 60 to 70. I think it's like $77 in here. a barrel. Okay, so that's what we're looking for out of the 90 puts on USO. And again, those are for September. Now I want to look at the SPY here for a second because I do believe we're starting to get our breakout to form the top of this cup. Sorry, just looking at a couple positions really quick. Okay, anyway. Let's go ahead into the next one, which is, I don't know the company name, so I do know the symbol. Replimune, something like that. We're already starting to see this pull down. So, however, on the daily time frame, identified this very nice cup formed. And from that cup being formed, I'm simply just wanting to short down to the handle, be able to buy the bottom of that handle before continuing up towards this $11 range. So the puts that I'm looking at here are the $8 puts, which fortunately we're already starting to move very close to that range. But these are the $8 puts for June 18th. They're currently about 50 or about $45 per. And those could run very well into, we see the 20 mile here at the $5 range. So we could be seeing this run basically a whole $2-3 in the money on those puts before fully seeing that upside. So I do like that position a lot. I'm just kind of annoyed that I didn't take it a little earlier because it would have made those puts a little cheaper. Let's check Apple. So Apple daily time frame. Looks like it is trying to bounce upward from this 10 MA, which should close this cup all the way to the 315. So technically we do have roughly about a $6 upside. And that's just aiming for the cup close. But I would not short into this just yet. There's this very well defined cup forming to the 311, basically that 312. From that 312, that would create the opportunity for a small short, and this is on the 5-minute time frame, so these positions would be more of, like scalp positions. But overall, that's what I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for that structure to continue to the upside. But potentially we can see this breakdown. We do have this inverse cup formed on the hourly. And if this is an inverse cup, then this cup right here that we're identifying as bullish could be forming a handle to pull back down. Okay, so that's something to be a little cautious of on Apple. It's not really in a range that I would like taking positions on too much. Again, what I look for is I look for pushes above the upper Bollinger on the daily time frame, or large cells below the lower Bollinger. That way we can either take a very quality short position to the 20 mile or a long to the upside. So overall, that's kind of what I'm looking for on those positions. But nothing I'm too keen on taking with Apple currently. Now, I want to go back to the SPY here. Do you see the cup? Should be forming the handle. From this handle, this should lead to the breakout towards that 758.20. See our VVIX still pulling downward, but it is at the 90.33. It did pull all the way down to the 90.05, so still hovering within that range a little bit. But I do think I will try to take a short position once we do clear the top of this cup. And that short would go to the 575. So I'd probably target, simply just that 757 put. I think I said 575 earlier. I get the numbers mixed up, I do apologize. So if we can get our upside breakout, that'll be very good. I'll look for a put from the top of this cup to form this handle to the upside. I can't recommend buying or selling anything. Unfortunately I have to use that verbiage because I'm not a financial expert. I can't tell people to take positions or not. However, I really do like the Reply. I'm just gonna call that company Reply, even though I know it's something else. I do like the Reply 8 puts for the 18th of June. I think they're very, very reasonable to make quite a lot of money on. Now we can check out MicroStrategy, or as it's currently called, Strategy. Now, I know a lot of people were getting fairly bearish on it because the company sold, I think, like 33 Bitcoin, something like that, which is overall for the company, it's a very, very minor amount. Okay. Um, with that said, no, I'm not bullish on Bitcoin right now. Okay, so it is very hard for me to recommend going into, any of these crypto tickers. However, I have been, you know, looking at this downside on them, and it looks like a very quality buy, potentially. Okay, because if we can get our upside, then potentially you could be seeing a lot of upside. However, if you continue seeing this breakdown, then that breakdown is going to take us all the way back down, basically to this 35. Grab all that liquidity there. Yeah, likely push us all the way back down. And we're kind of seeing a lot of that same sentiment within Bitcoin itself too. Bitcoin has just been continuing to lose ground. And I'm not even going to look at the daily time frame, but the weekly time frame. And again, I've been charting Bitcoin for years and years and years and years and years. This chart has been holding up basically since early 2022. From this, we have identified a major selling channel. Okay, and this major selling channel has not been able to find a breakout. Um, we have not been able to break out of this channel, is what I'm saying. So we hit the top of the buying channel twice, hit the top of that selling channel, and then we've been breaking down. Now we're currently forming the liquidity for this right shoulder on this very large head and shoulders. Again, this is the weekly time frame, so it's quite a lot of time put into this structure. A further breakdown within this structure is basically taking us very, very low on Bitcoin. And this might look like a steep drop to the downside, more so be something like that. But essentially, we could be heading back to this 49 range fairly soon here. And that's very, very concerning when wanting to take any upside in Bitcoin. Um, this chart is a little terrifying to look at in terms of wanting to go long on Bitcoin. So it's hard for me to look at Bitcoin and be bullish right now, even though there's a very solid case that, people could find some support at the bottom of the selling and buy to the upside. Now on the HIG, we are still seeing a little selling. It did sell down all the way to 79.81, and so far it's pulling back up a little bit, which could coincide with trying to form that cup top. Let's go ahead and see what's going on with SPY. So again, we do have quite a bit of bullish structure building here on the 5-minute time frame. It's looking very, very positive for our upside breakout to fill this cup and head to that 758.20. Let's check the Jolt data. See what that came out as. Now, over the last couple of years, the Jolts have been basically saying that job openings have been absolutely terrible. This time, they're actually quite decent. It's actually kind of a shocking report. Hold on. Essentially the highest job openings since December, which would mean that this would be the best rating of the year so far. That can be bearish for the market, because this leads a lot closer to, I know you guys can't see the data on my screen right now, but the previous number was 6.887 million job openings. Now it's at 7.618 million. Now this can get revised, but this is still a very high rating. And that can be seen as hawkish data. Hawkish data can definitely turn the SPY and overall equities fairly sour. However, it does look like we're seeing the yields pulling down. Let's check TLT. So we did have this very large pull down with this news, as you can tell. Traders did not like that a whole lot, but it didn't take them down too much either. In terms of the daily time frame, this is basically nothing. So it seems to be buying up since that news as well. So the market's not taking that news as poor. Still looking for some form of a top to this cup here. And this is on semiconductors. Very likely this cup top will coincide with when SPY pushes towards that 758.20, creating that short position. So we'll see if we get it. Now I am going to look at the SPY puts because I might be taking this put. And again, once we hit the top of this cup, I would be targeting that middle Bollinger. So if we can get our push up there, which it's looking very likely we do, then I will be taking this put to the downside. Sorry, I'm just looking at something really quick, everybody. Now, within Uber, we're starting to see a little bit of buying. So potentially this could be the bottom of that cup. Basically trying to determine if I want to buy another call or not. Which I think I will. Okay, so we're getting very close to our level here on SPY. And this does coincide very, very greatly with our upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame. So multiple different reasons why we should have a very quality short position within that. But really wait for that 758.20 to hit, and it will push us above the upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame and really create the very quality short position that we're looking for. So that's what I'm waiting for. Not going to enter early. And again, if you do follow this trade, understand 0DT options have a lot of risk to them. So if this goes poorly, then do not get mad at me, but I'm taking this with my own risk. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and enter this position. And we're simply looking for slightly above this 757.20. So I'm going to set the conditional order to 757.25. Okay, so that means that with these puts, and I only have a few, that it will take 80% of the positions once we hit that 757.25. Okay. So that's what I'm looking for the exit. If we need to adjust it, we will. But we have hit the top of this cup now. And from that, we should start seeing, okay, so we are seeing a little bit of a pull down in semis, which again, we are looking for bear structure at the top here. So that does coincide with kind of what we're seeing with SPY. We do expect that cup top to essentially close. Now with QQQ here, we still have quite a bit of ways to push towards the upside. QQQ might aim for that before fully having that short to the downside, which if that's the case, then um, I will add very lightly to those SPY put positions. Volatility currently at 90.37, so not the low of the day, but not the high of the day either. It is starting to tick upward a little bit, so if we see this push above the 20 MA, then that would be, short-term bearish for the overall market. Now, I want to watch QQQ closely here because QQQ might try to pull down prior, make a handle, and then head up, or it might be trying to close this cup first. So I want to see what's going on with this because obviously QQQ is going to have a lot of tech weight into it. And if that tech weight's going to push upward, then we're going to see SPY pushing upward slightly. Now on Uber, we're starting to find some support at the bottom here. The OBV/ADL starting to look a little better, but we are looking for this push back up, basically above this 74 range, within the next 1 to 2 sessions. And I want to check Starbucks in a couple seconds here. QQQ looks like it's wanting to pull down prior to finishing that cup. But we will see. We want to make sure that's fully occurring. And on SPY, our price is currently at 758.27. So still within that cup top range. And we should be starting to expect a little bit of bearish structure starting to build at the top of this cup. So that's kind of why I'm currently shorting into that. So if we see the pull down in QQQ here, that will definitely resonate within the SPY. We are seeing semiconductors creating this smaller head and shoulders on the 1 minute time frame. So exactly kind of what we're looking for, that bearish structure, telling us that we should pull down, form a handle before fully heading to the upside further. So that should resonate within the SPY and QQQ as well. Starting to see this pull down in QQQ slightly. SPY, we're starting to see this tapering. So these puts are looking good so far. And our volatility is at 90.35. It was at 90.39. It ticked downward just a few cents, which that can, lead into dealers not hedging positions, expecting that upside. So we are seeing this pull down in QQQ. QQQ has quite a lot of range to the downside here on the 5 minute time frame. Now I want to check Starbucks here. We did pull down all the way to the 95.61, which on the 5 minute time frame does create a little bit of an inverse cup. We'll see if there's continuation into that, because on the daily time frame, again, we are looking for basically this to start pulling up on the day overall. So even though the 5 minute time frame has that inverse cup, we are still looking for Starbucks to see the upside. What's your target? 755? No, my target's simply just right above the 20 mile in this situation. So I have my conditional order set. I don't know why the drawing's deleted, or disappeared. I have my conditional order set to the 757.25. Okay. Um, Currently that's basically right where the 20 mile is, but once we do start pulling down, um, the 20 mile will be pulling down as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking for on that. Now, QQQ. Starting to form a little bit of bearish structure here, but we do need to see continuation of it. Semi is starting to give us that bearish structure, so that's looking good. Volatility at the 90.38, so ticking upward very, very slightly. We do have an inverse cup closed here on semiconductors on the 1 minute time frame, which means that now we can head up very, very slightly to continue to form that inverse handle to the downside. Kind of the same with QQQ here. If we continue breaking down, then there is this smaller head and shoulders forming. And from that, that should be that bearish structure that we're looking for throughout the SPY and everything. Do you see a little bit of a cup on this 1 minute time frame? I'm not super concerned about that just yet. Either QQQ is going to pull down, again at the top of this range, form some liquidity to the downside before heading upward, fully completing this cup to the 745.64, or it's just going to try to blast off and do that prior. Kind of ready for either one of those situations. If it does decide to head upward and do that move, then I will simply add a few more puts to the SPY puts. HPQ, we're starting to see this pull down from the top of this cup. Some people told me this would not happen, but I disagree and always short the top of cups regardless. So we are starting to see some weight gained within our puts. Quite a lot of downside on this overall. And going back to QQQ, 1 minute time frame, we are seeing this head and shoulders looking very, very likely, which for SPY would be giving us our downside. So we are looking for that. After the SPY pull back to the 757, what's our upside? Excuse me. Sorry, my voice is still not 100% healed. It's mostly healed, but not 100%. Our upside target on SPY is basically this 760.28. Have a line at this 764, or excuse me, the 760.54. So that's kind of what I'd be looking for, is basically this to form a very large cup to the upside. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm looking for out of that smaller handle. We are seeing semis doing what it needs to do with this inverse cup and handle. So that should be pulling us down on the SPY very, very shortly here. And within QQQ, we're seeing the Head and Shoulders playing out. So our downside 20 MA should be very quality here. And again, I am targeting the 757.25. I know the 20 MA is, excuse me, I'm gonna need to take a drink of something in a second. Um, I know the 20 MA is currently slightly above that, but as we start pulling downward, the 20 MA will start pulling downward as well. So I'm still kind of looking for that exact same target. Anyway, I'm gonna mute just a second so I can drink something. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had a little bit of a coughing attack. Still looking for our same target though. Nothing has changed within the last 30 seconds. We're seeing our VVIX still holding that 90-36 range, so not exactly bearish, not exactly bullish. We are seeing semis pulling down, so this is kind of exactly what we're looking for our pull down within the SPY. These puts should do very well. But I want to check QQQ. Starting to get the pull down in QQQ, so we're just simply waiting for this pull down in SPY. Starting to get it. And again, I am targeting the 757.25. We might need to move our target slightly above that, but I am kind of expecting that push downward to that range. Starting to see a little bit of selling within the equity side. So within the time and sales, we're starting to see a little bit of selling. Now I did add very slightly to my Uber contracts today. So my current average on those are at 0.41. Should be getting our push down here to the 757.25. I just want to look at semiconductors while this is going on. So semi is still pulling down. They're currently at 588. They were all the way up at 594 this morning. So we are starting to see those pull down quite a bit. And QQQ is currently at the 742. Now we do want to see these pulling down a little bit further so that we make sure that we actually get our 20 mile exit. Good job, that should be a nice profit for you. Not the biggest, but profit's profit. Now within semis and everything, we're seeing a slight pull upward. So just be very cautious with these puts, everybody. QQQ has, excuse me, QQQ has tested the 20 ma, so potentially it could be bouncing upward. Not fully seeing that yet, but that's just a potential. Semiconductors, kind of the same thing here. Hit the 20 ma, could be bouncing upward from that point. Keep having coughing attacks today, I apologize for that. So QQQ did form this inverse cup on the 1 minute time frame. From that, we should be expecting a slight handle to the upside before pushing downward even further. Same thing with semis here. We have this inverse cup built at this level, looking for essentially a small handle to the upside before continuing to push downward. So I'm expecting SPY to actually push to the 20 ma here and not just reject it. But we are starting to see some buying out of QQQ and semis, but again, very likely trying to form this handle to the downside, but we will, you know, double check to make sure that either it's going to be the case that they're forming those downside handles or we're actually fully buying to the upside. So my voice is starting to cut out again. VVIX did tick upward quite a bit. It was at the 70, excuse me one second. Oh, I can't talk today. It was at the 90.39. It did pull all the way up to the 90.81. So if we continue closing this cup towards that 91 range, then that's going to, be telling us that we can be seeing, quite a bit of selling within the day. But so far we are starting to see, kind of this upward bounce through QQQ, through semis. Now, these can be inverse handles to the downside, so we just have to watch for that very closely. And I'm going to mute really quick to take a drink of something, but we are starting to close this cup here on SPY on the 1 minute time frame, which that can lead to, of course, a bullish handle to the downside before pulling up even further. So I will be using that to basically exit the puts if we're not going to continue seeing downside through semiconductors and QQQ. Do I look at the SPAX levels ever? I do sometimes, but it's not something I specifically watch for. Um, but this is very bullish today. Again, we're not shorting to um, really short the market. We're trying to short this just for bullish reasons. Um, there's a lot of bullish reasons that we're going to, you know, see basically all-time highs today. Market is starting to push. QQQ has been starting to chop here though, which again can be alluding to that handle. Same with semiconductors here, so have to be just very cautious. But with SPY, it's pretty much giving us the breakout. From the top of this cup, we should expect that small pull downward, and I'll be using that to exit the puts. But we are starting to see, again, this tapering in semiconductors and everything. And if that's the case, then that's telling us that, you know, we do have quite a bit of downside throughout the session. But we need to see the actual taper occur. We need to see the actual selling occur here before we can fully identify that. Anyway, I'm going to mute just for a couple minutes just because I need to take a drink of something and just rest my voice just for a couple seconds. So I will be right back while we watch QQQ. I apologize for the mute, everybody. Okay, so we're seeing QQQ potentially still breaking out here. Semis potentially forming a small cup here. So if that's the case, then this cup will basically take us back to the high of the day. And if that's the case, then we definitely don't want to be in these SPY puts. But we are looking for, again, a small reprieve here. As we did hit the top of that cup, we do expect a small handle to the downside. And that's basically what we're looking for currently. Looking for that small downside so that we can exit the puts and get positioned into calls, because even with the VVIX rising very slightly today, I am still very bullish this week. I do believe that we're going to push quite hard. And I really do expect basically all-time highs again out of today. I expect us to push all the way up to the 760.28. From there, close that cup and start building a little bit of bearish structure at the top to form a handle downward and continue pushing into, the next new high. So we do want to get positioned into calls today, if you're, trading in the SPY. Yeah, that's absolutely fine if you got stopped out on those puts earlier. Um, Completely okay, especially with kind of the sentiment we're seeing now, where we could eventually, really start pushing up here. Um, we basically want to try to get out of these puts very, very soon here. Okay. I am looking at the 1 minute time frame. I am trying to get this pushed down basically to the 20 MA on the 1 minute time frame. That's at the 758.20. On the 5 minute time frame, that would be a lot closer at 757.57, which is a mouthful. 757.57. Anyway, looking for a little bit of that downside reprieve so that we can exit those puts, and take calls to the upside. Now the upside calls today, I am going to be targeting that 760 because I believe that strike's going to hit very well. So again, looking for this downside reprieve so that we can exit the puts and get into calls. Now ideally, we would want to pull down all the way to this 20 MA here on the 5 minute time frame. Excuse me, on the 5 minute time frame to really signify that we're going to have that downside that we need to be able to position those calls to the upside. Now on the 1 minute time frame, we are seeing potentially these inverse cups and handles forming. There's a small cup here and potentially a handle forming to the upside on semis that we talked about, so we do have to be very cautious of that. If that breaks out, then that will, pretty much break the entire market out. Watching these very closely. Potentially this is that handle on that cup. And we do have some bolt structure on semiconductors here too. Okay. We do have this potential inverse head and shoulders going on here. Which definitely can lead to a breakout towards the top of that 594.90. Basically the 595. Would be really ideal if we can get our pull down. This way we can get a call entry at the 20 MA and head to the upside. Does not seem they want to give that to us though. We're starting to see this smaller cup working to close here. Same with semis. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and exit the rest of the puts. I'm not gonna play into that today. We're seeing quite a lot of upside here, and it's looking very likely to push all-time highs. So we're not gonna mess with that. Now, the 760 calls, again, this is not our ideal entry here. Okay. I usually do not like taking positions at the upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame in terms of targeting the upside. Okay, usually I target puts at that range. Today's a little different. I'm going to take a very light position within the 760 calls. And if we do have our pull down, that's when I'll just simply add to those positions. But with the bullish structure we're seeing right now, I do want to be in some of those 760 calls. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get those opened. Yeah, it's looking very bullish. Market's looking very bullish right now. Semis closing this smaller cup should see a very small pull down. But this is looking like that cup and handle to the upside. It's looking very, very strong. Now again, I do have a very small entry on the 760 calls. I have 4 positions. If we pull down on the 5-minute time frame towards the 20 MA or even the lower Bollinger, I will be adding to those calls just because we do have so much bullish structure on the day. It looks very good for that upside. So usually not a range that I want to take calls into, but today is one of those type of days where the upside is just very large. Now, VVIX has been pulling upward quite a bit, so this is very, very concerning. We are back in this yellow range, which is, kind of that cautionary range. We have pulled up from the 90.05 all the way to the 91.69, basically a high of the day. So that can be a bearish signal, but I'm not seeing bearish structure forming within any of our symbols. All of our symbols are looking like they want to break out to all-time highs. Now, within the HIG, I want to look at the HIG in liquid here. Just before I get too overboard in bullishness. The HIG has been buying up since the morning. It's kind of hard to identify here, but we do have a cup and handle forming, which is telling us that very likely we should pull back to this $80 range today. That would be extremely bullish for the market. Okay. Because again, I am kind of looking for all-time highs out of liquid, out of HIG, to really reflect that the market upside is actually truly going to be there. Yeah, I know it is some vibe trading. It is. I won't lie. Um, but I'm okay with that today. I think it's going to be a very quality winning position. In fact, our calls are already up. We see all the signals kind of pointing us to the upside. The only thing that's not is the VVIX rising. This is telling us that big money is hedging equity positions. But we've been seeing the HIG, or not the HIG, but the VVIX kind of working a little wonky over the last few, I want to say basically a week and a half now, where some of our largest buying days, we've been seeing the VVIX just absolutely flying to the upside, or we see it, pulling to the downside while the market has been, having a quote unquote selling day. Um, so it's been a little bit of a mixed signal recently, even though it's something I use like an anchor. Um, it has been a little misleading, but I do believe that the HIG is telling us the story. I do believe that Liquid is very likely telling us the story here. If I could find it, there it is. Where we do have this cup, likely forming the handle to the upside. Yes, we did exit the SPY puts. Now, when we do push up to the upper Bollinger here, which is literally happening any second here, I am going to take a hedge. Okay, so I'm holding my 760 calls, but I want a 750, basically a 757 put, just in case we pull downward. Okay, um, this is purely kind of like an insurance type position. Okay, um, I'm not really even expecting the downside from here, but with us having the calls to the upside and with us fully expecting this upside, I want to have a little bit of insurance. And the primary reason for that is just because the VIX or the VVIX has been, you know, really heading upward quite a bit today. Um, this is very concerning, even though the rest of the market is telling us that extremely likely we're going to be breaking into all-time highs. So I'm holding that 757 put purely as insurance. Um, if we hit our 760, I'll go ahead and cut that position. Again, I'm going to be cutting that position with a loss. Okay, that's 100% just going to be a losing position. Um, it's purely insurance on the day, but we are expecting all-time highs. Now I want to look over Starbucks. So this is good. We're starting to see this cup and handle forming here. It did pull all the way to the 96.78. So this is very good. This is kind of exactly that type of structure that I'm looking for to pull us out of that, the deeper selling range that we've been in. So that's looking positive to me. Out of Uber here, not really seeing major quality structure. But we do have this smaller cup. Let me delete this arrow so we can actually see what I'm talking about. We do have the smaller cup right here. From the smaller cup, expecting a very small handle to the downside to continue pushing upward. So this price action makes a lot of sense currently. We could kind of see this on the hourly time frame where we have this cup forming this handle. Now we just simply need to find basically where the bottom of this handle's at. I did add to these positions very lightly today, but it's looking good for the breakout to the upside. I want to look at Mark here. Again, we're starting to see this bullish structure at the bottom a little bit. Starting to see that cup. Starting to form that handle. So those calls look very good. Now I want to see HPQ. We talked about shorting the top of this cup. That position's looking very good so far. Now again, the exit's going to be anywhere from that 27 to the 23 range. It really just depends on how far the market wants to pull down. I'm personally targeting towards that 23, but if we pull down to the 27 and start having a bounce, then that'll be quality enough exit on that. So I want to check the SPY here. Now on the 760 calls, I do have a conditional order set at the 760.31. Okay, so slightly below this range, and that's going to be kind of where we take major profits. At least for the 0 DTEs, I'm not positioned into anything longer than that. I'm still writing these SOXS puts. So remember yesterday we talked about taking the 6 strike puts. Everybody should be doing very well on those if you took those positions. Mine are up quite a bit. Yeah, SPY's doing very well right now. I am happy we exited those puts like we talked about. I did add again those couple hedged puts after the fact, but those are purely insurance just in case we get some crazy move to the downside. But overall, this 760 should really be the target on the day. Gonna put an arrow just to kind of signify that. And again, this is closing a larger cup. So we would be looking for that cup to close. From that cup closing, and I want to adjust this line to basically where our stop loss is. It's basically right there. It's at the 760.31. But we're looking for this cup to close to the upside, and it's this very large cup right here. From that closing to the upside, that would give us a very quality exit on those calls. And if there's a position to short at that point, then we will try to target a short. But overall, the market looks like it wants to break out. We even see in QQQ on the 1 minute time frame starting to close this inverse head and shoulders slash cup to the upside. And that's highly, highly indicative of wanting to push to the 745.64. So a lot of these upside targets are extremely large today. Are we worried about the June drip calls? No. They're down a little bit. Old note. I still stand by that though. If you're gonna be buying shares, you should try to pick up 100 shares at a time, kind of in any symbol you're trading. That way you can sell options on it if you want. Now, drip, we have been pulling down. However, this is kind of entirely news-based. If we see a closing to the end of this conflict, then we will form this cup to the upside. which pulls us well above our strike. Okay. Um, but until that happens, we're going to see some chop. So still in those positions, but still waiting for that upside. And we do have positions for September and for December as well. Okay, those 5 calls. So if June turns out not being so great, then not the end of the world. SPY is looking very good to push this upside. I do want to check our VVIX. It did hit the 91.73. It's currently at 91.69, so basically just hovering around that same area. And our HIG closed that smaller cup, which is, overall bullish. Yeah, this week has been a lot better so far. And we're actually getting good movement out of some of our symbols too. Now, I'm going to be right back in just a couple minutes because I do need to go say bye to my daughter really quick. But I will be right back. We are going to just continue to watch the SPY here. Again, we do have a market conditional order set to the 760.31 on a majority of these calls. So if we get our upward push while I'm gone, my calls will be taken. For the majority, I'm going to leave a couple runners, but from the top of this cup, we should start to anticipate some bearish structure, and we will look for that to the downside. So anyway, I'll be right back in just a few minutes, everybody. Okay, I'm back. Apologize for that. So yeah, we are vibe trading a little bit today, but it is okay. We saw a ton of bullish structure, which is why we got into the calls when we did. We were looking for this handle to form on this cup that originally formed this morning. It did not give us a very quality pull down. Um, and because of that, that gave me kind of the conviction to say, okay, we're not pulling downward. Um, we're overall bullish on the day. We were looking for a call entry. Better just get into some of those calls. And if we need to buy down, we will buy down. But a little bit of vibe trading with that. because again, I usually take my calls into the lower Bollinger, but we did not have that this morning. The only lower Bollinger entry we had was in the pre-market right before open. We did see that pull down and push up. So they didn't give it to retail, but we did find a way to, find profit in some of these calls regardless. How's everybody's trading day going so far? So far, I'm up on the day, throughout multiple symbols. The big one that's really doing a lot of work for me right now are these 6 puts on Success. Those are up quite a bit. We're seeing semis just pretty much absolutely ripping to the upside today. QQQ formed that cup, building a little bit of a handle, but very likely we see it push all the way to this 745.64, which for SPY would also coincide with that move to the upside, pulling that 760.28. Yeah, my daughter is feeling a lot better. She still has a little bit of a cough, but overall she's doing way better. Um, my wife's doing a lot better, and unfortunately, I'm the one that's still sick. So, well, I mean, fortunately, I don't want them to be sick. You know what I mean? But mine's still just holding on a little bit here. And again, currently we have our conditional order set to that 760.31. We do have a 757 put hedge to the downside. Again, that's purely as insurance. Not really expecting that to pay out or anything. It's just in case we're seeing this upside from the VVIX actually trying to tell us something, then I want to be prepared just in case. But we should get our target here extremely soon. Basically just another 50 cents to the upside and we will be good to go on those calls. Yep, we're definitely going to be hitting this level. Now I'm not going to exit the 757 put just yet because again, once we do pull to the top of this cup, we should be expecting some bearish structure to form a handle downward before pushing upward even further. So I'm going to see if we can kind of recover some of the weight on that, insurance position, so to speak. But I think, excuse me, I do think once we do hit the top of this cup, once the majority of our calls do get, taken from us, um, I will be trying to target that downside 758 with a couple puts. Just because we're expecting, multiple very large cups to close. Um, Once those all close and coincide together with closing, then that's when I'll be really trying to tack on that short position. But our calls are going to be taken any moment now. Actually up quite a bit on the day so far. Those Sox S puts from yesterday are really, really, really doing good. So I do hope that some of you were able to take some of them. Um, they are just absolutely blasting off today. We're starting to see our HPQ puts starting to rise a little bit. Our mark calls are kind of just hanging in limbo. Those Oklo calls from the watch list yesterday are just absolutely kicking butt right now. They're up a whole $240. And from yesterday, yeah, it would be up close to $360 from yesterday. Unfortunately, I did not get those Oklo calls, I mean, the 72 strike, but they were within the watch list. And we're seeing the HIG continuing to push upward. Should get our exit very, very soon here. Those open calls from last week are doing very, very well. Again, we have the June 18th 5 straight calls. Um, Currently, they're up quite a bit. Opens currently at 555 or 554, excuse me. The main position I'm down in right now is Starbucks, which we're actually starting to see it pull to the upside quite a bit. Um, it pulled all the way down to the 95.61 today, and it's currently at the 96.63. So I'm just waiting for some of that weight to be reclaimed on that. On Uber, I'm still waiting for the bottom of this cup handle to form. We're slowly starting to see it, but it's taking its jolly old good time. That's awesome, Slink. I want to see what Okla is actually sitting at. Oh, yep, the strike did hit. So from yesterday, if you would have taken those calls, which I wish I did, um, we would have gone from basically the 64 all the way to the 72. Um, so within that whole time frame, there's been basically like a $400 profit on those positions, which is super awesome. Um, Even if we didn't take it within the watch list, it's really good to see that our watch list is, you know, succeeding. Just waiting for our upside exit here. We hit the 760.18. Now, I don't think that's what they're going to be calling the top of the cup here. I do think we have a little bit more push to go. Oh, I missed your message, Diana. I'm sorry. You think the SPY is trying to go to 764? I think absolutely. Um, just based off the daily time frame, if we're going to be having an upper Bollinger push here, which we're building, plenty of bullish structure to do so, then the upper Bollinger is at the 762.58. If we're going to have a day one upper Bollinger push here, then we will be closing above that level. So that would mean we'd basically be closing at that 763 plus. Um, if we don't hit it today, then tomorrow that level just goes even higher. So either we're going to push that level today, secure that day one upper Bollinger. Day two, we expect a higher high. So assuming if we close today around that 763, securing that upper Bollinger day one, then the day two, we'd probably be expecting anywhere from that 765 to the 766 before having a 5 mile retest to the downside. So there's a lot of room to push within the SPY currently. Um, technically from this exact level, we probably have a full $5 to $6 of upside over the next few sessions. And semiconductors are just absolutely ripping. Our 6 strike puts on SOXS are absolutely killing it right now. Very nice to see. SPY, my market conditional order again is at the 760.31. So I'm looking for that to hit our level and take some of those calls, close that cup. From the top of that cup, we will look for bearish structure, potentially short down, and from there, kind of look for that breakout above the current all-time high. So that should be a very nice trade setup today. Yeah, it was a very, I don't even remember how I learned that mechanic. Um, it was just something I consistently saw within the trades where whether it was the lower Bollinger or upper Bollinger, it would have the day one secure the level, day two have the higher high, or in the inverse case, the lower low. Um, it's just something that's super, super, super consistent. So if we see those type of movements, I usually jump on them, like crazy. Because again, that's kind of exactly what I'm looking for either the major push to the downside or major push to the upside. I want to be entering dated puts at the upper Bollinger day 2. I want to be entering dated calls at the lower Bollinger day 2. This is kind of one of those examples when we did enter calls at that lower Bollinger day 2. And we wrote those calls. We did exit some of them at the 20 mile because we did have a anticipation that potentially we could reject there. However, we got the ceasefire news literally the afternoon, like 5 minutes after the close, right after on that day. So, whatever. But we did have some other calls going, and we did ride that up towards this range. We did have a little bit of this upper Bollinger push here. It didn't give us the full level, but it was enough to give us conviction to write those calls up to that range. So for us, and for me, I was writing a lot of TQQQ calls and a lot of the SOXS puts. I did very, very well on those. For SPY, that's basically a $80 upside. Um, and that's why we target the lower Bollinger. Um, Either you're going to have a support test or you're going to have that massive breakout. Kind of same thing with the upper Bollinger. Either you're going to pull down, have that support test, or you're going to have a major breakdown. But it was just a pattern that I constantly would notice while trading. But it's something I haven't been able to really find on Google or anything. There isn't the actual mechanic out there other than, uh, from what I know, coined by me. Um, which is interesting because it's like, it's 2026. I learned this mechanic late 2023 is when I found it out. But it's like, we're in the year 2020 something, and we're still being able to learn new mechanics that you can't even Google, you can't even find in a book. At least from my knowledge, I haven't been able to. Um, and they're mechanics that are very, very strong too. We've back tested them. They hold very, very consistent. So simply looking for our exit here. And from that exit, we're not going to rush into puts or anything. We're going to allow some bearish structure to build in here before we take puts to the downside. If we must miss the puts to the downside, I'm entirely okay with that because what we will do is simply just grab onto that 5-minute Bollinger or the 5-minute 20 mo, excuse me, and take more calls to the upside. Okay, because very likely we're going to be heading up to that 763 from that range. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Complete this cup top, and my calls are going to be taken any second. Come on. I'm just going to let them be taken in a couple seconds. Not going to worry about that. Um, but from this downside, with this closed cup, we should be expecting, quite a lot of upside overall. So I'm going to drag the cup over just a little bit to show that that is trying to close. But we'll look for bearish structure, the pull down, and from that pull down, very quality calls to the upside. And my calls have been taken. Awesome profit on there. Very happy about that position. So currently, I'm sitting on the runner calls. I'm going to be keeping these open even with this push downward. And I'm still holding the 757 put. Okay, again, that 757 put was purely as insurance. What I'm looking for is a pull down to the 20 mo, and I will exit that put at that level, even if it's on a loss, which it almost 100% will be. That original put was kind of just insurance to those calls regardless. So just looking to get a little bit of premium out of that insurance position at this point. But overall, within the day, once we can reclaim this 20 mile range, we're really going to be expecting some pretty heavy upside pushing. Now, the VVIX is still very elevated. It's really kind of hovering around this 9170 range. It's currently at 9164, which that's not good. You usually don't want to be seeing your VVIX pushing upward when your equities are bullish. But I'm not really putting a whole lot of credence into the VVIX currently because we're currently seeing HIG buying upward, we're seeing liquid buying upward, and the overall market is positioning a lot of bullish structure for that upside. So we will be looking for that handle downward. From that downward handle, we will be taking additional calls, and it'll be just tacking on those 760 calls again to ride towards that 763. So that's kind of going to be the day for the SPY and the overall market, unless there's some news with the conflict or something that changes the overall trend of the day. But that's what we're looking for. And so far I'm up very much on the day. So hopefully some of you were able to take some of those calls. Hopefully some of you were able to profit off of those as well. If not, then just kind of wait for the next position to open up and we'll get into it. I am just gonna mute just for a couple minutes, just because I want to rest my voice a little bit, and I do want to be able to stream probably another hour and a half today. So I'm gonna rest my voice for maybe 2-3 minutes, get a drink of something. We're just waiting for structure to build at this point. And after we start getting some of that bearish structure, we will target some of those 759 puts to the downside. So yeah, I will be right back, everybody. Let me know how your trading day is going in the chat. Let me know if you're finding profits on the day, how some of your positions are going. I'm, super interested in hearing about it, so let me know. But I'll be right back in a few minutes, everybody. Alright, I'm back, everybody. Alright, so we're just looking for bearish structure at the top here. We're potentially starting to see some with this smaller head and shoulders on the 1 minute time frame. So if we do get that right shoulder building, then that's going to be when I enter into some of those puts. Same with QQQ here. However, QQQ I do expect it to kind of push up towards this 745.64 prior to having the pull down, so I will be looking for that. And semiconductor's not really giving us bearish structure just yet either, so this can be forming a small head and shoulders. Not entering into these puts yet, I want to wait for further structure to build here. Today's the type of day where I'd rather just miss the puts and, find a really good entry into the calls. If we do happen to miss these puts. So not too concerned. But I do want to see this cup close out of QQQ first. Nobody wanted to go over their trading day so far? I mean, is everybody doing good? Is everybody doing bad? How's everybody's positions going? So far I'm having a very good day, so hopefully that's kind of being reflected through everybody else's positions. Um, if not, then, I'd love to talk about it. We're seeing the VVIX at the 9160, so starting to pull down a little bit. As I say that, it moves up a cent. Missed the put exit. Dang. Well, so here's one thing with the put exit is that potentially you could be getting a really nice put exit. Um, it's not going to be the same as the morning put exit, but we have closed this cup. From the top of this cup, we can get a fairly deep downside. Potentially all the way to the lower Bollinger today, and that would still fulfill the bullish conditions of the day, while giving you potentially that very quality put exit. So I would be looking for that, especially now that we have closed this cup. Um, we're technically trying to enter some form of puts currently. Um, I'm just really waiting for this cup to close on QQQ to the 745.64. But I do think you're gonna be able to find your exit on those puts, even as bullish as today is. But I'm basically just waiting for QQQ at this point. Yeah, that major liquidity candle was a little scary this morning. Um, but it really felt like they were trying to shake out kind of both sides. They first shook out a lot of the calls super early, and then they shook out some of the puts afterward. Was a good next entry for SPY calls, and would 760 strike be a good idea? Yes, absolutely, the 760 strike would be a good idea. Um, but you do want to price that out at least 2 weeks. Okay, and I'll go over why in just 1 second, but I need to have a little bit of a coughing fit. 1 second. Right, Diana? Yeah, I did see that this morning. Now, so here's what I'm looking at for kind of why I'm so bullish over the next few weeks. Okay. It's very likely we're going to be seeing a push into the upper Bollinger on the weekly time frame too. Okay. Now, on the weekly time frame, that means that we're going to be closing, and I'm not saying today, I'm saying sometime this week, very likely above that 770 60 range. So basically that's 771. Okay. Um, we have a ton of bullish structure. We're expecting the daily time frame to have this push into the upper Bollinger, which would push us towards that 763, 764, with a higher high of tomorrow, potentially even that 770 range. Okay. But I am looking for this week one upper Bollinger to close, or to be closed upon. Now, from the week one upper Bollinger, kind of the same thing with the daily time frame. Week one, we expect the level to be secured. Week two, we expect higher highs. So if we get higher highs from this week's, upper Bollinger push, if we get that, then that would be assuming very, very likely we'd be hitting towards that 780 range. Um, so I think that's very reasonable, especially on the pull down today. Again, we're looking for this handle to the downside. Once we get this downside handle, that's a really, really good call entry. Um, Especially if we're going to be getting that upside push. Yeah, that's why I have some of those puts hedged, the 757 puts. Um, and I'm going to be tacking on a couple more here, but with all this bullish price action, we have been seeing the VVIX rise today. Currently it's dropping, which for us that's a good signal throughout the overall day, but it still has been very elevated today. It was all the way at the 90.05, currently at the 91.42, so has pushed up a lot. Starbucks starting to do pretty good now, closing some of these cups. Should start anticipating our major upside to start occurring pretty soon here. So I'm excited about that. On Uber, I'm waiting for some form of bullish structure. This is just a lot of chop, basically a downward wedge right now. Um, Not really structure I like because it's not really giving us too much of bearish structure. We have this inverse cup here, potential inverse cup, potential inverse cup. But they've been kind of holding a quality level on this too. They haven't really invalidated some of this downside we've seen on the day, which means that we could be seeing a pretty large bounce to the upside. Um, ROBV has been very choppy, but it is starting to look like it wants to pull into the positive, which would be very good for Uber overall. So those calls I still like a lot, not shaking out of them or anything just yet. TQQ is about to give us our level, literally just a few cents away. And I do want to drag this to the top of that cup. Basically at that 64, close enough. So we are looking for QQQ to push and start forming bear structure before we really start tacking on a lot of these SPY puts or anything. Now SPY, we are starting to see some of this bear structure. We are seeing this head and shoulders starting to form. So technically, that is the bear structure that can be used to push us downward towards that 20 mile in the 5-minute time frame. But yeah, we're just waiting at this point. Um, Again, I kind of want to see QQQ really push that cup top and form bearish structure. Um, Technically, it hasn't closed the cup fully, which, yes, that's only 6 cents off, but through all technicals, that's still not a closed cup, so I do expect that push upward, which is why I'm not entering the SPY puts just yet. Now, the Starbucks calls are actually in the profit now. Not a whole lot, only 3%, but I will take that over being in the negative. So I am happy about that. Now I am entering some of these SMCI puts, the ones we talked about earlier in today. The 38 strike SMCI puts for June 18th. Okay. I can go over that trade again if anybody wants, but I went ahead and took my puts currently. Probably should have taken it when we were at that 51.40, but I'm still entirely okay with where I took it. I wanted to take them a little earlier today, but I did kind of forget about that while watching the SPY, so let's see. You said the repel put is not doing good. I'm not worried about it, um, because overall the price action is trying to pull us downward. Um, and we do have all the way until June 18th. Again, these are not 0DT trades for those watch listed options. So we have plenty of time. So don't worry about that position too much just yet. The price action is trying to pull us down overall. So I'm very, very convinced that that's going to hit very well. So if ES hasn't made a new high, but SPY did, would SPY go back up for the ES to take care of it? Yeah, absolutely. We would see the SPY be pushing, uh, you know, basically all-time highs to cover for the ES, um, to fill that gap. So let me pull this up. $0.75 off of that. Yeah, we'll see that closed. Um, Almost certainly. Very likely that's going to be that price action that pulls us, um, well above the 760 today. Because absolutely we should be seeing the same type of price action reflected within the SPY and the SPACs at the same time. Well, the ES main. I wonder if SPACs actually has the same. Nope, so SPACs did close that all-time high, but it is still down quite a bit currently. At least from where the top of the day was. It did pull all the way to the 760.20. So on SPY, I did not take those puts at the top. Entirely okay with it. What I'll be doing is tacking on additional 760 calls to the upside. But I am looking for that 20 mile range to be hit today. From that range, it will be a good entry. Won't be the best entry. The best entry would be if we pulled all the way down to the lower Bollinger, but with how bullish today is, it's very hard to see that occurring. Our VVIX has been really kind of chopping at this range though, which is very concerning. Um, you know, we have pulled all the way from this green range of, kind of no one's selling positions, no one's hedging positions to now we're in that cautionary range again, which can lead into selling positions. Doesn't always correlate to that, but it's still a signal we can't ignore. So the SMCI puts, I believe the 38, they're the 38 puts. Okay, they're the 38 puts for June 18th. The Starbucks spread is huge. Um, it's a little big, but it's not overly concerning. Again, these are out of the money contracts, so don't market buy into them. You will get burned if you market buy into these contracts that are out of the money because the spreads will be larger on them. But currently it's saying that they're at about $40 each, which that means that someone is buying at that price. And we are starting to see Starbucks really head up quite a bit on the day. I was expecting this to start occurring yesterday, but I will take it today as well. And what we're looking for is some of these smaller cups to close. From those smaller cups closing, we will be looking for that larger cup to the 108. From that point, we'll kind of evaluate the positions, whether we're expecting this very large cup to the 113.64, or if we will, be seeing a further breakdown from that point. But the Starbucks calls look absolutely good. Um, Now for SMCI, again, these are the 38 puts. Now the reason why we're targeting the 38 puts is because the 5 mile is currently at the 44.44, the 10 mile is at the 39.24, and the 20 mile is at the 35.85. Now, any move to the downside, these puts are going to absolutely start flaring up, okay? However, we're really trying to target that 20 mile. Doesn't mean we'll get it. You know, potentially we could only pull down to the 5 mile and then bounce again. Potentially we could pull down the 10 mile and then bounce. We'll be watching very closely, but we're going to extract some profit out of this downside that I am anticipating. The HPQ puts are up quite a bit. Let me look. Oh yeah, they are. Okay. Um, yeah, I am really expecting these to hit strike. Um, let's just kind of go over HPQ. If I could find the H. Sorry, I'm so blind. There. Okay. And let's go to the daily time frame. So again, the reason why we're shorting this is for bullish reasons. Okay. Don't misunderstand that at all. Um, we are shorting this purely for a bullish reason. Okay. We close this cup, and from that cup closing, we expect a support retest. Now, this support retest, and I'm going to delete some of these arrows, but this was just showing on the daily time frame some of that structure building with the upper Bollinger into what we expect of the support retests. But this support retest could be just a 5 mile test, which means we could be hitting that 27 range and then bouncing. It can go down all the way to the 24.85, which is the 10 mile. That would hit within our strike, so that's why I really like that position. But if we get down all the way to the 20 mile, you know, that pulls us down to that 23.07 range, and that's going to push our strike basically $2 in the money. Do I think it's absolutely possible for that strike to hit? Yeah, I do. Again, we have this cup formed. From the top of a cup, I expect a quality handle to the downside, and from that handle, continue pushing upward. So that's why I'm saying we're shorting for bullish reasons. We're not shorting this to watch this company blow up or anything else. We're shorting this because this is a very bullish structure, and from this bullish structure, we do expect that downside push, you know, for bullish reasons. So I do expect those puts to land. A lot of these contracts on these watch lists that I've been sharing, I do expect to land in the money. They've been priced out very carefully in order to do so. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. SPY here still holding strong. QQQ did finally close the top of that cup. Okay, that's very good. That's exactly what I was looking for before really targeting the downside in SPY. So now that that's hit, we do have the bearish structure within SPY. The puts to the 759, while there's not a whole lot of room on them, look very good because either we're going to hit that 5 mile or the 20 mile and bounce, or we're going to push down towards this lower Bollinger. If we get the push down towards the lower Bollinger, that's going to be a very primed call entry and a very nice put exit. So I am looking for that. Um, Completely willing to take the 759 puts into this structure. Um, Even if those puts end up burning, for example, if we go to the 20 mile and then we start pushing up again, remember I do plan to buy some of these 760 calls at the 20 mile, and if we do push down to the lower Bollinger, I will buy some of those 760 calls at that range too, because the upside today is just very, very, very large. So that's sort of the goal with the current positions. HPQ is not a short-term hold. Okay, so remember, these contracts are all the way until the 18th. Um, yes, you can put a conditional order on it. If we were to get that entire move to the downside today, then we would, absolutely use today to take profits on those positions. But we have all the way until the 18th. Okay, so there's no need to rush these positions. Basically, they have the time to, you know, work on the proper levels that they need to work on. And our VVIX is at 91.42. So back to the 20 mode. This can bounce upward or it can continue pulling down. We do have multiple cups. Technically, we have this cup, a handle, and from this nested cup, we can see an additional handle to the upside, which can pull us down quite a bit on the day for SPY. No, the SPY options are purely 0DT. Only the ones in the watch list are the dated positions. So doing some day trading with some longer swings. Our success puts are just absolutely killing it today. Did anybody take some of those 6 puts with me yesterday, or I know some were hesitant because last week some of those positions didn't go that great, but um absolutely killing it right now on these 6 puts. And especially if we're expecting upper Bollinger pushes out of the SPY, out of QQQ, out of semiconductors, then we can see Success running all the way below the $5 strike, which would pull these puts basically in the money by a whole dollar plus. So that's going to be very good. Um, Still holding onto those. Took them and sold them this morning. That's absolutely fine. That's the thing. If you're pulling profits, that's absolutely perfect. Yes, we are seeing that. They are pulling this 20 mile upward quite aggressively. Um, but in tandem with that, we're also seeing the lower Bollinger being pulled up quite aggressively too. Um, which is why we might actually be able to get a very quality lower Bollinger push um, with these puts and with being able to enter calls at that range. So even though we are seeing, a little bit of chop in here, I do think this chop is going to pull us downward, either to the 20 mile and basically consolidate at this range for that upside, or we're going to have that fairly large leg downward and then push up to the upside. Ready for either one of them. Um, So yeah. Starting to see Uber pull back up slightly. Starbucks starting to really rally to the upside, which is kind of exactly what we're looking for. Again, I was looking for this to occur yesterday, but I will happily take it today. We have plenty of time in our positions. So just being patient and allowing them to do the work they need to do. Now, on some of these smaller positions that we're sharing within the watch lists and everything, each session, um, you don't have to wait until they run to that strike. But the goal is for them to run to those strikes, okay? Because the whole goal of these positions are to basically pull from like, between the 20 to $40 range all the way to, 150, 200, 300, even 500 plus dollars. Um, that's really the goal of those positions is to really have them run. But taking profit on them is fine too. Again, we're going to be looking for these type of positions each and every trading session, and there's always going to be new positions opening up. Um, so there's always going to be different available trades. So if you miss one or if you take profit on one, quote unquote early, it's not the end of the world. There's always going to be another trade we'll be able to set up that has a very, very high likelihood of success. So SPY's putting me to sleep right now, even though I'm waiting for my buy entries on these calls. Again, I will slightly tack on some calls at the 20 mile, but ideally we want to buy at that lower Bollinger. Um, but these are the 760 calls for today, and I actually want to take some of the 760 calls for, I would usually say for tomorrow, but I do want to get for the end of the week. Now, they will be a little more expensive, so just be very aware of that. Um, you know, once we hit our level, and that'll be if we hit the lower Bollinger, okay, that I get the end of the week calls. Um, those calls at that point will still probably be around like $300 per, so do not overload. Do not burn your account or anything else because, with the current narrative, things can flip-flop very, very quickly, and those calls can definitely burn, even though we are expecting major upside. But with that said, if anybody has any questions about any stocks or anything else you want to go over, now's a really good time because we're just basically sitting through the chop currently. RVVIX is pulling downward, which is a bullish signal. Our HIG has been pulling upward, formed this cup, pulling downward slightly, but I am expecting this to kind of form a handle to the upside. So we should be seeing that 763 that we talked about in SPY. Can I look at ADA? Absolutely. ADA. Okay. Let's take a look. Look at the weekly. Okay, so we're really pushing all-time highs on this stock. Well, not at the exact moment, but we were. So, couple things we see here. We see this day 2 upper Bollinger push here, and we see a little bit of lower Bollinger here, but it doesn't look like they fully grabbed that level. Now, with that said, lower Bollingers are when we take calls. And we are seeing this, fairly bullish structure to the upside. It's not the most perfect inverse head and shoulders, but, I'm not one to judge. I just look for structure. From this, we should be seeing this cup closing. Okay. Now, we did have a previous cup starting to form here. That did invalidate with this downside move. But with this downside move, we are seeing the liquidity to be able to continue pushing to the upside. In the hourly here too, starting to form this cup to the upside, so as long as that doesn't break down, then it is looking very, very positive for this larger cup to close on the the hourly time frame and the daily time frame. So overall, it looks bullish. The OBV/ADL has pulled down a little bit, which is slightly concerning, but it is starting to pick back up quite a bit, which is, likely indicative that it's going to try to push that cup closing all to the all-time high again. So overall, I do like it. I don't know if it has options. It does. I can't really see the volume on it though. Oh, okay, so there's a decent amount of people trading this. So that's not bad. I wouldn't really look for options to like the 34 though. I mean, technically you could. It's a little expensive, uh, especially when it's basically at the 34.28 and not very close to the 35. You'd either have to take that 30 call or just take the premium from that 35 call once we do get pushed up towards that 34 range. Yesterday on Uber calls, I accidentally bought the 80 call and 82 call for the same day on June 18th instead of June 18th and July 17th. Is this going to make a difference? Overall, I don't think so. And let me just pull up Uber. And the main reason why I don't think so is because we are working to build bullish structure here. Okay, and on the daily time frame, again, these squares are when we had lower Bollinger moves. Okay. From this previous lower Bollinger move, it was at the, looks like, basically that 69.17 range. From that move, we should be seeing buying to the upside. Now, what's that buying to the upside going to look like? Very likely at first it's going to close this cup towards that 80. However, we do have some other cups to contend with here. Okay, and we do have the duration, we do have the time. So can this pull all the way to the 87? Absolutely. I don't think that's out of the question at all. Now, if you want to be very, very safe, when we do close this cup basically to that 80, 83, the 82 call won't be in the money, but it'll be very close to at the money. Okay, so you can, sell that position basically when we sell the 80 calls, and you'll be profiting off of it very, very heavily. So it still applies the same. It's just slightly more out of the money and sort of out of the strike that we're looking for in the current current cycle. But I would try to basically take profit on both those positions at the same time once we actually do hit that 80. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. By the time we do get up to that 80, you will be profiting off that call. So potentially getting a little bit of a bounce at this 20 mile range. So again, I'm going to very, very lightly add to the 760 calls on the day, but we still potentially can pull down towards the lower Bollinger. And if we do, then I will be adding even further calls and adding some weekly calls in there as well. Starbucks still doing good. We have closed a smaller cup here, so we should expect very, very slight bearish structure before continuing to push upward. That upward push should take us to the 99, whether that's today or, over the next session or so. Yeah, you're very welcome, Nimble. In Merc, we're starting to see some of our upside. So again, we have the 124 calls for June 18th. You should be doing very, very well. Just need to get that upside breakout. Now, I was wanting to stream a whole nother hour today, but I'm literally falling asleep right now. So I'm probably only going to be streaming for like another 20 minutes or so. So if there's any questions, anything anybody wants to go over, I will be happy to do so. I will be mute for just a second though, so I can get a drink really quick. So I will be right back. We did get some of that pullback. It would be really nice if we can get the pullback all the way to the lower Bollinger, but today is very, 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 very bullish. Okay. Um, Today is looking like it wants to push into the upper Bollinger, which means that we still have basically a whole another $3 above us. Um, would it be really, really nice of the dealers if they would give us our pullback to the lower Bollinger? Absolutely. Um, but it's hard to put that expectation out there for the day. Um, Everything is looking extremely bullish. We just have a very slight concern that the VVIX is a little elevated, but everything else is pretty much telling us that we're going to be heading to the upside. We're starting to see buying within HIG again. Looks like selling, but there's buying occurring there. We see QQQ at the top of this cup, and with that cup top being in, I am expecting again a slight pullback for that handle. So that's kind of what I'm expecting within SPY as well, but it's very hard to put that expectation out there again when the market is just very, very bullish right now. But there's a lot of reasons to see this pullback very slightly. So again, QQQ and SPY both have closed those cups. They both need handles. We should be seeing a slight pullback because of that. However, semiconductors here. Oh, they did close this cup. But this cup was only at the 596, so we're well above that. Kind of the same thing here. And we're actually in the hourly upper Bollinger, which is telling us that very likely this is going to be a good short position towards that downside. That downside could be just the 20 MA. Excuse me. 1 second. Either it's going to be towards that 20 MA or it'll be to the lower Bollinger. Oh, one thing really quick that I wanted to remind everybody. So with the YouTube memberships, currently they don't do anything for like the Discord server or whatnot, but I found out that I can actually set that up to where the YouTube memberships work almost the exact same as like those Patreon memberships. So if you want to be subscribed on YouTube rather than on Patreon, I'm gonna have that set up, but you'll be able to join the Discord server, get all the perks that you would get out of the Patreon as well. So if you don't like Patreon, you can subscribe on or join the premium on YouTube. Now I am going to be changing some of those YouTube prices because previously I just had them as basic, little supports. If you wanted to support my work and what I do. But with knowing that I can set that up to basically connect the YouTube to our Discord server and everything, then we are going to change some of those memberships to reflect that. So just letting everybody know about that. Am I on tomorrow? Usually I'm not on Wednesdays. I might try to get on for maybe an hour or so early in the morning. But we'll see. I'll let everybody know a little later tonight whether that's going to happen or not. But usually on Wednesdays I do take the session off. Basically that's the day I go to breakfast with my wife and everything, and that's kind of our date day. So, but I will have a little bit of time to stream before we take our daughter to school and everything. So I might be on a little bit. We'll have to see. Now, within the SPY here, we're seeing this very, very likely potential inverse cup and handle forming here, which if that's the case, then that's going to pull us down very likely towards this lower Bollinger. If we get the lower Bollinger today, which it's been very, very aggressively being pulled upward. Currently the lower Bollinger is at the 759.11. if we get to that point, I'm going to take some of those 760 calls for the end of the week, and I'll also be adding to some of the 760 calls for today. But this downside structure is looking really nice, so when we get that lower Bollinger, if you are in puts today, then please make sure you try to use that exit. Um, because I'm not sure we're going to be pushing down a whole lot further than this today. Again, the market is very, very, very bullish right now. My expectation is really to be seeing new all-time highs out of pretty much all of our main indices right now. So this inverse cup and handle looking very solid should give us our lower Bollinger, and from that lower Bollinger, we will be taking on some calls. So we're being very patient for this level. Should hit it any time now. Where's the lower Bollinger? It is currently at the 759.26. So we're literally just a few cents away from hitting this range. Yep, there's that lower Bollinger. So I am going to start adding just a few, and remember, just a few of these weekly calls. Um, if this is a very big position for your account, I would not add to those calls. Okay, I would only add to the 0 DTE 760s. So I have entered into both of those. If you're in puts today, use this range to exit some puts. Whether we push down further or not, we are at the lower Bollinger, and you really, really, really have to respect that level. So I am positioned very well into the rest of the day. I have quite a lot of those options from our watch list going. A lot of them are going very well. Not the crazy like 200% that we saw yesterday, but those days will come very soon again. Nope, I have fully exited the SPY puts. Um, Again, with this lower Bollinger, I'm not messing around with it. Um, the market is very bullish today. Can we absolutely pull down a little bit further? Yes, but I'm not going to be concerned about that. I do believe that this is liquidity to push to the all-time highs. The only concern I have again on the day is that the VVIX is a little elevated. Um, but the rest of the signals that we've been seeing, Higgs selling off a little bit, which I dislike. We want to see the Hig buying. But this could be coinciding with that lower Bollinger move that we're seeing out of SPY and everything currently. So I am expecting us to basically close at that 763. No worries, Nimble. So I've cut all the puts, and we are now in the 0 DTE 760 calls to the upside. And we're also looking for, and we're also in the 3 DTE 760 calls, which is for Friday. Now, if that Friday position is super expensive for you, I would highly suggest not to get it, um, because again, with SPY, things could change very quickly. Now let's look at our VVIX here. Yes, it did hit the lower Bollinger, and we are seeing a little bit of a bounce from that lower Bollinger. But with that lower Bollinger kind of bouncing, this is starting to open up the bottom Bollinger even further. Of course, my arrow's not going to align with it very well. Anyway, pretend that's the lower Bollinger. So we're starting to see the lower Bollinger trend downward because we're starting to see the 20-mile trend downward. Okay, and this is a very good signal for what we're looking for out of volatility. We want to be seeing the lower Bollinger expanding to the downside, and we want to be seeing this 20-mile expanding to the downside, because from this upward 20-mile retest should basically go something like that. Okay, which would be very bullish for the market. Um, so as long as we see this 20-mile trending downward, then we will be seeing the lower Bollinger also expanding to that downside. So that can be a bullish signal. We just have to kind of wait and see what they fully do with it. Yeah, we're basically looking for that volatility to kind of ride the lower Bollinger between the lower Bollinger 20 ma, lower Bollinger 20 ma, rinse repeat, rinse repeat. Um, we did see it pull upward towards this upper Bollinger a little bit today, but it's been really struggling ever since. Um, ever since basically that major pull up in the early morning, it's been on a very solid downtrend. So if we continue seeing the 20 mile pulling downward, continue seeing this lower Bollinger pulling downward, then we should be overall seeing volatility dropping throughout this session. Now, one thing we do have to contend with is potentially semiconductors pulling down to their lower Bollinger, which would give us further downside in the SPY. And same with QQQ. Okay. QQQ and semiconductors are telling us that there's a little bit of room still to push downward, even though the SPY has been very heavily consolidated here. So even though we did make our entry here, we can still push down a little further. Fully, you know, okay with that. If we push downward quite a bit and we do see that the semiconductors pull down the lower Bollinger and that QQQ pulls down to their lower Bollinger, I'll simply just add a little bit to those call positions that we have on the SPY. Starting to see Uber pulling upward again. Starting to form a little bit of bullish structure, so that's good. That's exactly what we want to see. Because again, remember this is a handle on a larger cup. So this should lead to an upward breakout. Starbucks, let's see what's going on with Starbucks. bullish structure. We did have this cup close, so we are having a little bit of a handle to the downside. Should again, you know, create the bottom of that handle and then push up towards that 99 range, probably over the next 2 sessions. All right, everybody. If there's no final questions, then we are going to be going ahead and ending the stream any minute now. Um, I do appreciate you all taking the time to trade with me in the morning. It's always fun having you all in chat and hopefully being able to, um, teach you all some new things about trading and how I navigate my trades and everything else. So I always enjoy your company and I always appreciate you guys stopping by to support me in the ways that you do. Um, and hopefully everybody's had a very good day so far. What's the target for the SPY calls again? For today, we're looking for this 763. Okay. It's really, really, really our target today is that 763. Because essentially we should see this cup form the handle, from the handle, very large breakout to the upside. Kind of the expectation anyway. So that's what I'm looking for out of, what's going on with the SPY. Um, Mickey, these were 38 puts on SMCI for June 18th. So if you have the 35 puts, close those, make sure you get into the 38. Okay, 38 strike is I'm really, really keen on that one. Um, I do think that the 35 strike is a little too far out of the money. Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, everybody. I will be around in the Discord. And just a final reminder, some of the prices on the membership in terms of the YouTube will change just very slightly because we're going to be able to connect the membership with the Discord itself. Um, so that way you can sign up through whether you decide the Patreon or the YouTube. You can sign up that way and get all the perks that we're going to be offering. Um, so we will be changing a couple prices in the YouTube. Um, but I appreciate all of your support. And yes, I absolutely can take a look at, we're getting calls tented. We're going to the 763. Mickey, I forgot, I didn't get to see what symbol you wanted me to go over. I think it was CRM. Salesforce. Okay, Salesforce, real easy here. Daily time frame, you have the upper Bollinger being pushed here, but you do have this closed cup. Okay, so what's that very, very, very likely alluding to? Pulling down, forming a handle. Now, this is a really nice setup. Okay, and this is actually a setup I might try to engage on at the bottom of this handle. So I'll leave that up to you to remind me because I'll forget. But at the bottom of this handle, there is a huge potential to reclaim this entire range. Okay. The bottom of that handle means that that's likely around what, $80 to $90 upside. Um, very, very killer play right here. Okay, very, very killer trade right here. And this inverse cup is not valid at all. So that does not count. This looks very nice. Um, but you should be seeing some downside prior to that upside. Once we get to that downside on the 20 month, we're gonna talk about this trade again and very likely try to position some form of probably 265 calls to the upside that are dated, because this is looking very strong. Now, are you saying entry for upside or downside? You don't want to enter the upside just yet, okay? Because with this daily time frame, we are technically overextended currently. Okay, and that overextension is telling us that even though this is starting to become bullish, we do need to very likely build a handle to the downside before fully breaking out. And that will also give us larger inverse head and shoulder liquidity as well. Okay, so don't rush this entry on this upside. Allow this handle to pull down because from an algorithmic standpoint, we're overextended. The algorithms are very, very likely going to try to pull this down, and that's why this handle is going to be formed. Okay. We took mark calls. Okay, so we took the 124 calls on mark for June 18th. Now I want to see SPY really quick before I go here. I want to see semiconductors. You see that semiconductors now? The upper Bollinger, or excuse me, the lower Bollinger is getting very, very close to where the price action is. Very likely that's going to be that downside into the upside bounce. Same with QQQ here. Not far from that range at all. So we can see a little bit further, downside within the SPY, but I still like our entry, and I still think that the upside today is basically going to be to that 763. So it looks good. The only thing that's been overly concerning today is the VVIX, which, yes, it's concerning, but with the overall bullish structure in the market, I think that we should be aiming pretty much for new all-time highs today. All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I will be in the Discord chat, so if you have any questions, just ping me, and I'll be happy to answer when I do have a moment. But thank you so much for watching the stream today. I will let everybody know later tonight if I will be streaming tomorrow morning. But usually again on Wednesdays I'm not streaming, but I might stream for maybe like an hour. Um, but yeah, thank you all so much for sticking around today. Hopefully you were able to secure some quality trades. I know today has been absolutely just super, super good for me. So hopefully I've been able to set some positions up with everybody else that have also been very good. So thank you all so much. Um, and yeah, I look forward to either seeing you tomorrow or on Thursday. But thank you so much, everybody. I enjoy trading with you all, and I look forward to seeing you in, a day or so. So take care, everybody.